What's up, Archons? I'm Flightless Pheasant, and now that you're here, we can take a minute to look through some of the spoilers that might have slipped through our fingers when we were taking some time to go through the articles of the Prophetic Visions Game Found. But before we do, I'm a huge fan of KeyForge, and if you are too, then please like, subscribe, and hit the bell, as I'll be bringing you even more lore from KeyForge and the Crucible. So just like I said in the intro, I want to take a moment to try to go through some of the spoiled cards that were released by Ghost Galaxy, primarily in the form of preview cards that were sent out during the Amber Skies fulfillment of the Game Found. As you know, everybody got 3 of those with their order, and a bunch of them have been posted online, and they're now visible, and I tracked down the ones I could find, and I want to preview them here. Normally, this would also be where I go through all of the cards that were previewed by other members of the community, now that the Game Found is wrapped up. But nobody else in the community got to do any previewing, or I didn't either, other than the cards that they put out on the Game Found. So we're just going to go through everything that wasn't in a Game Found article. So if it was in one of the house spotlights, or if it was in the article where they talked about prophecies and fates, I'm not going to talk about it here. I'm only going to talk about the things that have been previewed in other ways, which in this case I'm pretty sure is just the spoiler cards that were distributed with the Amber Skies Game Found fulfillment. So we're going to go through them, we're going to take a look at them, we're going to see what we think, and that'll be all the previews we have until Ghost Galaxy starts dumping everything on us a little bit before the set actually launches. But yeah, I still think it's a really good idea to spend a little time on these. So let's take a look. So we're just going to go through the houses in alphabetical order, and we're going to take a look at the cards and see what we think about them. So the first card that I came across is a disc card. It's an uncommon action called Oh You Shouldn't Have. Oh You Shouldn't Have has Fate. Your opponent gains 3 amber. This is basically a worse Prince Bufo, because he also just has Fate, and his gives your opponent 4 amber. But Oh You Shouldn't Have is an uncommon, and Bufos are rare, and if the card pool remains, I don't want to say smaller anymore because there's 8 houses, and so it might actually be larger, but more limited, so that each house has fewer choices, then you might see multiples of Oh You Shouldn't Have, which could be really good, especially if you have a prophecy that you can redo a few times. So I think this one's not bad, but again, no flavor text. You'll notice there's a chronic lack of flavor text across all of these cards. I can't do anything about it, but still, it looks kind of cool. Alright, next we have another discard. This one is a rare demon named Solo. He's a 5-power demon that says if there are no other friendly creatures in play, Solo gets plus 20 power and gains, after fight, gain 3 amber. He also has a fate effect that says destroy each creature. This is kind of a really neat creature. I don't know, though. He seems kind of niche. Like, I feel like his best use is as a fate effect to get a board wipe. But if you can get him on an empty board and he is able to fight, then that could be really good because he's got half a key built right into him. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be one of those creatures who, like, can be good, but is most of the time going to just be a 5-power demon or a board wipe. So, still though, I really like the sort of just grand champion of the arena, fully armored badass vibe that he gives off. This one could have really used some flavor text. And from Dis, we move to Logos, where we find Duck, Duck, Superb Duck. Duck, Duck, Superb Duck is an action that says play, choose 1, archive 2 random cards, gain 2 amber. And the flavor text at the bottom says Eureka, a direct reference to Eureka, which is a card that introduced the concept of a 2% improvement on the duck. And if you'll note, Duck, Duck, Superb Duck has both of the effects of Eureka, but split up. So instead of gaining 2 amber and archiving 2 cards as an alpha effect, now you get to choose, do I want to gain 2 amber or archive 2 cards, but I can do it at any point in my turn. I think this is really fun and playful. This is so good. I love the self-referentialness. I love the little cyber duck thing. Like, yes, this is what KeyForge cards can be. I like it so much. Well done, Ghost Galaxy. I mean, I'm genuinely just happy about this one. And that was our only Logos card to look at, so we're going to move on to House Redemption and take a look at some of the things that the new house has to offer. Or I should say thing, because we still only have one card for this house, and that's Ruthless Avenger. Ruthless Avenger is a 4-power knight. He's an uncommon who has Assault 2 and Hazardous 2. And he has Fate, purge 2 random cards from your discard pile, shuffle your discard pile into your deck. The Fate effect is not bad. I kind of like that it's a random purge, so your opponent doesn't actually have control over what it is. That could be devastating. But honestly, 4-power Assault 2, Hazardous 2 is not bad. And Redemption's looking like it really wants to have a superior battle line presence, and I think this guy can really contribute to that. So, honestly, good card. I'm pretty happy with this one as well. Next, we move on into Sanctum, and the first card we want to talk about in Sanctum is a card called Collective Calm. This is a rare artifact in Sanctum. It gains you an amber when you play it, and it says each creature gains after reap, gain an amber. So that means every creature is now going to reap for 2. But it also says after a friendly creature is used to fight, destroy Collective Calm. I like this card a lot, and I think I like it in particular because you can play it on a board where you have lots of Sanctum creatures, reap out with several of them for double value, and then swing one of your creatures to destroy the effect. But maybe that's why it might be too good, because in my mind, even if I only have 2 Sanctum creatures in play, I can generate 3 amber and then destroy this before my opponent gets any use out of it. So, I don't know. This might actually be a little too good, because it's just too easy to get rid of before my opponent gets any value out of it. And if I even just have 2 creatures, I'm going to get 3 amber instead of the 2 I could have gotten from just reaping out with the 2 creatures I had. So, I don't know. This one might be too much. But I love the art. Very, very ascetic monk kind of thing, which honestly I would have preferred for like House Inspired, but we do know the Grey Order is also monastic, so this does look very good for them too. Speaking of the Grey Order, the next preview card that I'm going to talk about is Grey Warden. He's a 3-power human monk at a common slot that has Deploy, and after fight / after reap, ready a neighboring Sanctum creature. This is a really good effect. It reminds me a little bit of the Grey Rider, but the Grey Rider forced to fight, and he got his effect on play, and he could affect anything out of house, whereas this guy can only affect Sanctum creatures. He doesn't get his effect when you play him, but he will get it on a future turn, most likely. This one also has flavor text. Yay! And it says, contemplation has its place, but sometimes swift action is necessary. I like this. I like that it's kind of hearkening to another card that's also a member of the Order of the Grey. I like the art on this one. I like the flavor text on this one. I like that it's kind of building on an older effect. Yeah, I just like this card a lot. I think this is going to be really good, and if it doesn't get altered too much from the final version, if this is basically the version we get, then I think it'll be really useful. And that wraps up Sanctum, so we move on to Saurian, where we first find a action called Paleogene Society. Paleogene Society gives you an amber when you play it, and it says, play, return a card from your discard pile to your hand, purge Paleogene Society. It's pretty rough, but if you think about most of the cards that we've seen that let you recur something from discard, and how much value you've been able to get out of that in some of the recent sets, Geistoid in particular just really abusing that, I think it's not at all unfair to say you get 1. But if that's too steep a cost, you can also use it as a fate effect, and its fate effect says ward each enemy creature. Which isn't terrible. I don't know if it's great, but it isn't terrible, and it gives you something to do with Paleogene Society if you're not wanting to purge it to try to get back a card from your discard. Also in House Saurian, and also at an uncommon, we have Plancina, Hidden Agent. This is a 3-power dinosaur assassin who has destroy each of Plancina Hidden Agent's neighbors, which at first sounds kind of like a bad thing, but then you check his fate effect, and it says put Plancina Secret Agent into play under your control, which if you remember how fate effect works, it'll come into play under your opponent's control, and if they don't have House Saurian, they'll have a little bit of a hard time getting any value out of him, and all I have to do is swing into him and his neighbors die, which is a pretty good bargain. I think this guy's kind of neat. He's got a few steps to him that makes him a little hard to use reliably or effectively, but I could use him to trigger my own destroy effects without too much difficulty, so all in all, I think he's pretty good. He's at least built into the mechanic, right? And that's one of the things I like to see in these special mechanic sets, is cards that really build into the mechanic and make it a part of what they're doing. And now we move into House Shadows, where we find the action Evasive Maneuvers. It's a common action that gains you an amber and says, play for the remainder of the turn, friendly creatures cannot be dealt damage. This reminds me a lot of like Potion of Invulnerability, but in Shadows, which is kind of nuts to think that Shadows might take a whole turn to just go in for punch fighting. But hey, I mean, if you're immune to damage, why not? Alternatively, it has the Fade effect to deal 2 damage to each friendly creature. But broadly, I feel like it's way better used for its play effect, especially because you get an amber out of it. And okay, yeah, Shadows isn't the fightiest house, and it doesn't have the best creatures for doing this. But, I mean, if they're totally immune to harm, then what's the harm? Also in Shadows, and also as an action, we have Hoodwink. This is also a common action again. Hoodwink says reveal your hand. For each non-Shadows card revealed this way, steal one. This could be really potent, even under relatively normal circumstances. I could take a Shadows turn where I play Hoodwink, steal 5 amber, and then still get to use all of my creatures that I have in play. That's a lot. Like, Swindle is alpha and omega, and it steals 3. Hoodwink could easily steal 5, and I still get a whole turn. And it's at a common. Like, I don't know, guys. This might be too good. Especially if I can build for it even a little bit. But then again, the power creep is real right now, and lots of people are gaining lots of amber really fast, so amber control needs to keep up. I don't know. Maybe it's fine, but I worry. And this one also does have flavor text. It says, it's always a pleasure to deal with such polite and cheerful folk. And you see the Getrukia here is getting robbed when he doesn't even realize that he's being robbed. He thinks he's interacting with one Svar elf and the other one stealing from him. Good teamwork. Good to see Shadows working together. And that moves us into Star Alliance, where we find the uncommon action, Further Investigations. This action gives you an amber and says, play, destroy any number of friendly creatures. For each creature destroyed this way, archive a card. I like this because I think it feels like it could be a cycle with Rage Reset, which destroys any number of friendly creatures, and then you draw a card for each one destroyed. This feels like the beginnings of a cycle, but maybe not, because Further Investigations doesn't have a Fade effect, and Rage Reset does. But I hope that it is, because I like cycles in KeyForge and other games, because it gives you an insight into how the different houses approach a similar situation, or a similar set of circumstances, and what their priorities are in those kinds of exchanges. Like, what would this house give up members of its friendly group to achieve? I think that's very insightful, and it's a good way to get a sense of what a house is about without it having to be explicit, and so it gives you kind of a lore insight. Speaking of lore insights, this action also has flavor text, and it's a quoted attribution. It says, fascinating, simply fascinating, and then it cuts off, quoting it as the final transmission from Science Officer Turner. I think this is like the second or third time that there's been a flavor text from Star Alliance that said final transmission of blank. I think they really need to maybe cool it on the exploration. They're looking into the deep, dark, dangerous secrets of the Crucible, and it seems like it's not going very well for them. So maybe it's time to take a chill pill on the dangerous exploration. Also in Star Alliance, we have the card that probably grabbed the most people's attention when these previews were first circling, and that is Sample 42C. It's a Star Alliance artifact. It's a rare. You gain an amber when you play it, and it says, action, move 1 amber from your opponent's pool to Sample 42C. If there are 4 or more amber on Sample 42C, purge it and forge a key at no cost. This is very similar to the Logos Redacted key cheat. Took me a second. Very similar to the Logos Redacted key cheat, but there's one key difference that I think might actually be important, and that is that this one actually takes an amber from your opponent's pool and puts it onto the artifact, instead of just placing an amber there and waiting to go off later. I don't know if that's a huge difference because Sample 42C will take a little longer to go off than Redacted, but still, I think it's pretty good. And then its Fate effect says the most powerful enemy creature captures half of your amber rounded down. So if you're really in a hurry to get a whammo-bammo out of it, you can just do that and it'll get you there a lot faster. And we're going to round it out with a couple of Untamed cards. The first one we're going to look at is Consult the Bones. This is a Untamed common action. It says, play, discard the top card of each player's deck. For each card discarded this way, resolve its bonus icons as if you had played it. Never before have I seen a card so clearly designed for Vault Assault. And I love it! Heck yeah, let's put in a card that gets just incrementally more powerful the more people you're playing with. Why not, right? It also says, the bones tell me nothing? Which, maybe, yeah. This could very easily strike nothing at all. But it could get really nuts. And the more players you have to play with, the more nuts it's likely to be. So yeah, I like it. And the last card I have is Lithomancy. Lithomancy is a Untamed artifact. It's an uncommon that says, action, reveal the top card of your deck. If the revealed card belongs to the active house, discard it and gain 2 amber. Which isn't very bad. It's actually pretty good, and it looks like Star Alliance is going to have some top deck control. So if you can get your top deck control to give you what you want, and you can take an Untamed turn, and you can discard an Untamed card to get 2 amber, I'm pretty happy with that. Plus, it plays into Haunted, although Geistoid's out for this set, so Haunted's not really the biggest concern. But still, I think it's pretty good. And then the flavor text is, much can be gained from internal reflection. Indeed, much can be gained. In this case, a third of a key. At least, potentially. And that's all the additional spoiler cards I was able to find as I went digging around to try to figure out who posted what where. If I missed any of them, I'm sorry. I didn't see any that were signed this time, but I think maybe they didn't send out special ones to be signed this time. Maybe they just sent out ones that were already normal ones of one of the ones I mentioned. I don't know. I couldn't find any of the signed ones. So maybe there are a few floating out there that I missed. But I still think this was a pretty good cross-section. And hey, unlike the spoilers in the GameFound articles, some of these had flavor text and were flavorful and interesting, which I think is really great. Not that there was no flavor in the ones from the GameFound articles, just there was no flavor text. But anyway, if you had a card you really liked, tell me about it down in the comments. If you're excited for Prophetic Visions, like I am, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I feel like we've got a good set on our hands, at least so far. But then again, these cards that I just showed you mostly were released with the Amber Skies GameFound pledge allocation as preview. And if our last couple of previews from GameFounds are any example, these could change dramatically between now and the time Prophetic Visions actually comes out. So take it all with a grain of salt. But that's all I have for you today. So until next time, later, Archons.